In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the MoonTeaPodcast. Today we have Matt Hampton. What's up, Matt?
How's it going, guys?
Hey.
What's shaking? We all good?
I'm stoked. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, Matt, we met on a really cool app called Lunchclub, and every week it'll randomly match you with someone who's pretty interesting in the community of Lunchclub. And yeah, we met a few weeks ago, and Matt was like so down just to come on the podcast one day, and so here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
He's what there's a few things, right? Like off the top of the head, own dev shop type thing or company growing there, astronomer, like astronomy photographer in an incredible way. Like you have your own DIY Raspberry Pi type like kits to throw on.
Yeah. It's got to keep things interesting, right?
And then the other part is you once bought a domain for a company you're trying to multiply, like start, and if you keep going and you're working at it, and we can talk about that too, for over 50 grand, which is, I don't know if I'm allowed to drop that, but I just
yeah. It was a little bit more actually, but yeah, I mean, we that we can talk about whatever you want to talk about, but yeah, happy to go down that rabbit hole too.
And for those of you just listening, Matt also has a really cool podcast mic setup. It actually makes Hugh and me seem like total newbies, but
yeah,
maybe we'll work our way there.
Yeah, it's funny what you can find on Amazon at 2 a.m. after a couple glasses of wine, right? And it makes it a little easier to pull the trigger on stuff. So
totally relate.
Yeah. So I don't know. Where do you want to start, guys?
Considering Matt, that you and I have just met maybe 2 minutes ago, and Hugh gave a very awesome introduction. Do you want to kind of talk about yourself and like what your dreams and ambitions are, and just kind of like go on that spiel?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you the elevator talk on that. Sure. So yeah, I mean, I try to keep things busy and interesting. I'm a guy who loses interest in things pretty quickly. So I like to do them until I feel like I've done them well enough for me and move on to the next thing. So I do have a bit of, as Hugh was kind of alluding to, I have kind of a eclectic past. So with a lot going on presently too. But in a nutshell, I'm a creative kind of person. I have a degree in figure drawing, which loosely translates to drawing naked people who need money to pay for school, and that they model as a way of doing that, and we draw them without clothes. And that was an actual college degree. I actually graduated with that, and I wanted to be an animator at the time, so that felt like the right thing to do. But as it turns out, you don't make a ton of money doing that, and it's crazy long hours. And so I decided, whilst still in college, that there was a more commercial way to hawk my wares, and I got a graphic design degree and stuck around a little longer. My now wife was my girlfriend then, so it gave me a reason to kind of hang around with her a little bit longer. And did not have a whole lot of success in New York City right after college. It was the whole .com crash and burn, and so I had 5 jobs in 2 years, I think, and got laid off from all of them. I think I only got health insurance actually vested in one of them, and it was the last one. So that led to starting my own thing with a couple friends from college, and 22 years later, we just entered our 22nd year of business. So we're just going into that, and it's still going. That little tiny dream hatched in a studio apartment in Manhattan is now, what it is. And so I get to scratch that itch, play with cool tech toys and talk to cool people and work with cool companies. And that keeps me professionally intrigued. But early 2000s, a friend of mine from college's older brother actually had headshop.com, and I was very intrigued by headshops in general. And Headshop, we bought the domain from him, and headshop.com was born. And we've been doing it ever since as well. So that really got going in earnest, I want to say 2003. And now this year in 2022, we are basically expanding that project into lifestyle. So a lot of self-quantification and biohacking type, supplements and toys and, wearable technology and stuff. And as well as psychedelics and basically the lifestyles that attach to both of those ecosystems. And that has been just a ton of fun. I mean, I'll be honest, like that's a really cool thing to be tied into. And it's been fun too, because, one side of my life is a web design company and the other side of my life is a website. So it kind of, I get to both be service provider and client to myself on both sides. And it's great. And then past that, man, I don't know, I could bore you to death on all the personal stuff that I do, but I mean, it's everything from Ironman triathlons to astrophotography to play the banjo to, I mean, you name it.
Do you still live in New York City?
I do not. I currently reside in Baltimore, Maryland, actually. So I'm down here. Spent about 15 years up in New York area. Still get up there. I mean, COVID notwithstanding, I still get up there a lot. But prior to COVID, I assume one day I will once again go to New York City, but that's not in the now future. So hopefully again one day. We'll see. It's getting a little too comfortable. I don't know about you guys, but is it comfortable to just kind of not leave your house more and more? I mean, I'll be honest, I don't want to not leave my house, but at the same time, it really is a lot easier,
I think the colder it gets, the more I am just very comfortable being at home.
Yeah. You are in New York, right?
Yeah. I live in the Upper West Side.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I was technically in Hoboken. So we casually say New York because not everybody knows where Hoboken is, but that's where I was.
Oh yeah.
The sixth borough, as they might sometimes refer to it. Yeah, no, I love it, man. I love it up there. How's the city doing in COVID?
I mean, I was having a lot of fun. Hugh, I guess Hugh's switching his internet, but yeah, I was having so much fun. I just moved into my apartment like 5 months ago, and basically, COVID just hit us really hard, like the second half of December. So that was not as fun, but
no, I don't imagine.
But I'm comfortable in my apartment, and I have 2 bikes. I have 1 bike and I'm borrowing another. So yeah, just hanging in there. I get to run my podcast from my living room. So
yeah, well, I mean, it certainly was. COVID was sort of the boom for podcast, right? I mean, people can kind of have cool conversations and not really go too far to do it. So
yeah. How long have you been running your podcast?
So we are recording tonight just our 18th episode, so not too long. Kind of moving on. It's actually part of a bigger project about self-quantification and biohacking and weird health tricks and stuff. So it's sort of a more formal conversation on what used to be a hobby and then grew into an obsession and now is growing into a business extension on Headshop. And it's what we're doing to sort of work out our thoughts on all this. So it's been a great medium for that. I feel like verbally sketching ideas is via podcast is a really, really great way to sort of solidify what you want to say. Right. I mean, makes you kind of think about it in a very specific way.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's been a pretty interesting journey for us as well, because
what was that like? What's it been like?
So we started in March, and our first 10 episodes was just Hugh and me talking to each other, being like, why are we making a podcast?
Yeah. Right. What the hell are we doing?
And then we sort of started bringing on our friends and just sort of like made up a format to it. But yeah, it's been really rewarding. And it's cool to kind of like, as a co-host, just kind of like craft the direction of it and kind of like see where it goes. So luckily it's a success for us because the goal is to have fun. But yeah,
So do you guys have like a kind of person you like gravitate towards, or is it just kind of find cool person, insert conversation here kind of thing? Like, I mean, how does that work?
Hugh, do we have a kind of person?
I think it started out as John is saying, just one-on-one, and then introducing friends to friends and be like, oops, started recording type line, like let's go. Yeah. And then now we're kind of doing the same thing, but then now we have like we just had the other episode was Junior, who's the cousin of a friend who was on the podcast previously, and
gotcha.
He's from Nigeria.
That's cool.
Right? And yeah, so now we have Lunch Club.
yeah Which, by the way, man, have you had a bunch more of those? I'm having a lot of fun on that platform. That's really, really cool.
Yeah. I try to do about 2 a week, and this week I'm counting this one and a reconnect on Thursday as another one. But overall, I haven't missed a week yet because I've been talking to an AI data scientist lady who just like quit her job at AWS and is wanting to start her own startup. And I'm like, whoa. The connections that you can make on here. If anybody is wanting an invite, just email the MoonTeaPodcast@gmail.com. We'll get you on there. It's super solid, great way to make connections. And honestly, you meet people like Matt.
Right. Yeah, no, and I talked to some guy in Moscow yesterday, and and I talked to somebody in Venezuela the day before that, and then last week was somebody in Spain. Like it's definitely an interesting club. I actually have a client in New York who does 6 a week.
No way.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's
isn't
amazing.
It? Yeah, I was like, how the hell do you have time to do that? And he's like, this has become my new networking. And so it was fascinating to me because he said, I just have these really cool conversations, and it's a little easier. I mean, he runs a networking group. And so for him, it's actually real easy. And we actually started a Baltimore chapter of that same concept down here working with him. So we're probably going to start to explore a little bit of that because it's an interesting dynamic. I don't know if have you ever done any kind of network groups, like anything like that in the past?
Not really. I mean, what type do you count, like local meetup type things, or I guess
there's
also masterminds too?
Yeah, right. Yeah, BNIs and like masterminds and like Vistage and EO and there's a bunch of different physical one. Well, at least there used to be. I don't know what
what is it?
Yeah, I don't know what they're all doing now, but yeah. So yeah, I mean all of it, like collectively, like and the problem is I've been doing those since I started my business doing those, and I've been doing them for years, and I don't know, they were fun for a while, and free wine and past hors d'oeuvres, and that's kind of cool. Then it was pay for your own drinks, and that got less cool, and and then it was basically like now it's everything's virtual, and that's really not a lot of fun. And so this new model basically pays people for referrals. So it's basically very transparently transactionally oriented. And so that I have found, there's a couple people in our chapter here that I knew from other networking groups, and there's a couple new people, and everyone's got, friends, and they're inviting people. And it's funny because it's got everybody charged up again, because everybody knows why they're there. They're just there to make money, like by getting referrals and giving referrals. And it has been absolutely shocking how well the model works, because of that one tweak to the system, right? Like you're what somebody I don't know, is this a G-rated podcast, or is this, I don't know.
Go for it. You're good.
Yeah, he's like, this group is about we don't want dinner and drinks, we just want to have sex. Like that's kind of what how somebody described it to me. It was like, I'm not here to talk about my day or make you feel better about yours. This is transactional. That's it. And everybody, paradoxically, everyone's having a great time. Like everyone's really relaxed. Everybody's, really giving referrals left and right to people that they think are going to have a good personal connection with. Yeah. You know, like, I mean, like you and I hit it off the other day on Lunch Club, and that kind of was the genesis for this. But if I had somebody come through in that space and I was like, hey, you should meet this guy, like that is an easy conversation, because it's connecting two people you think would have a personal, like successful personal relationship. Right. And if they're looking for, you know, a web designer or a designer or a, you know, financial analyst or whatever that profession is, it's even better, because you're like, well, you could choose any financial guy or any dentist or any, you know, web designer, but how much cooler is it doing any of those things if you actually like the person too? You know, it's a lot easier. And how much cooler is it if you found that person through a friend of yours, right? And so I don't know, it's been a fun experiment, I think. So, but Lunch Club, he's making like a crazy amount of connections on that thing. It's nuts. Although, I don't know, have you thought about how likely it is that it's actually AI driven? Because I have my doubts. I feel like there's somebody back there with the spreadsheet just, you know, putting people together. Yeah, okay. Look
Minimum wage.
Yeah, right.
Like,
totally. Yeah. Oh, look, these have a questionnaire, and there's like 9 things these two dudes have in common. Let's just make them talk. That sounds good. Yeah, you know.
yeah,
so I don't know.
What are you looking for? Type checkbox. Oh, they're looking for the same thing. Okay.
Yeah. It's funny. The guy in Moscow was the one who we talked about this, and he goes, what's the difference between machine learning and AI? He goes, machine learning is done in Python and AI is done in Excel.
Like, that's so true.
Like,
oh my God. Every prototype for any mobile app, like Uber or Lyft back then, right? Manually done.
Yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? And I started cracking up because I had not heard that before. But as soon as he said that, I'm like, oh yeah, that checks. Yeah, completely. Yeah. Yeah. So it's really funny. But yeah, no, it's a good idea. I don't know. It's free for now. I don't know how interested I'd be in it once it becomes paid, because, you know, that's where it's going to go eventually. And, you know, that might, you know, put a wet blanket on it a little bit for me. But until then, I'm having a great time doing it, meeting all kinds of interesting people out there. And I will say, I don't know about you, but everyone I've met on there has been like 3rd+ degree in LinkedIn. So it's like people I quite literally can't imagine would have ever talked to outside of that, you know, like I just wouldn't have interacted with them. Like you know, unless barring some cosmic coincidence, it would have been very unlikely you and I would have ever met, you know, in any other way. You know, we're nowhere near each other geographically. Yeah, we have some similar professional crossovers, but we have way different focuses. So like there's no, I mean, it would be very unlikely, right? Yeah, although you do live in a telescope kind of area, so maybe I'd have bumped into you doing an astro trip out there.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The only possible crossover would have either been like a dev shop referral, or if I got into astronomy photography.
Yeah, correct.
My God, if you could show a photo one if throughout this sometime of your setup, that is one of the coolest photo nerd setups I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, no, it's intense. There's no question about that. Yeah, I mean, is this a video thing that you guys do?
This will be on YouTube, but also Spotify.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so it's also that. Yeah, here. Let me see what I got here. Yeah, it's funny. One thing about telescopes, which I always thought was funny, is there's no person I've ever met with a telescope that doesn't want to show off their telescope at some point in time.
Well, look at that thing.
What is
it's
that?
amazing.
Wow.
And then we have to see the photographs afterwards.
So this is the telescope, right? This little red thing at the bottom is one of the cameras, right? And that's what does that's the photography brains of the operation, right? And those little vent on the side there, it actually cools the sensor manually. So there's literally a refrigerator built onto this thing, right? And you can cool it to a predictable amount. And so because I shoot in the summer and the winter, I usually pick -10 degrees Celsius because it's a temperature I could achieve in 80-degree heat as well as -20 Fahrenheit. So but the cooler you get that, the cleaner your images is going to be, because you're not getting heat on that CMOS. This camera is actually a CMOS. I actually have a different camera now that's not CMOS anymore, but this other little guy up here is a different camera, and he runs that guide scope. And what that does is that tells you that follows a star. So you pick a star and it follows it, and it sends little pulses to the mount that says, I've moved, a little tiny bit, right? And so move the mount with it. And so that's how you can take these, crazy long exposures over, weeks, days, months. And then actually, if you look here, this is actually the software in play during acquisition. And I'll show you the photo that I took out of this. But if you see that little tiny, this little thing up there, the red, I forget which one is which. Red is, right ascension. Blue is right ascension, and red is deck. And so the right ascension and deck are the way that is tilted like that. So the telescope goes side to side, but it also goes up and down. So it'll move based on that, and you can track how off you are. And that's what you follow to make sure, if you see some weird, stuff on there, it means something went wrong. It's not tracking the right way. And then basically all this is doing is you say, this right here, it says it's processing image 2 of 50. So in this run, I did 53-minute exposures, and it literally just counts down 3 minutes. And then it basically, you stack them all together in another application. And the photo that I took in that run this is a finished product of the image that you just saw, the run that you just saw.
And what is that's a galaxy?
That is the Orion Nebula, actually.
The Orion Nebula. That is so amazing. And
so you ever seen the Orions? You've seen Orion, right? The 3 stars in a row, and the guy with the bow and arrow. This is in there. That's what you can't see.
Is this the kind of thing where you start with the little telescope, and then as you learn about the telescope, you're like, oh, I need something that's 10 times the budget of my previous telescope?
So that's how rational people would approach this. I went the exact opposite way. I was like, I want the thing that will, so, I guess a little education goes a long way. It's one of those things where you kind of have to pick what you want. For example, this is my other rig, so it's quite a bit different. So this is very, very different of a setup. This is a wide field setup. You see a lot of the same stuff though, right? Like camera at the back, guide scope, guide camera. It basically, the difference is it's quite a bit smaller, and the difference there is that where this image, right? So here's an image taken on that setup. So this is what's called the Veil Nebula.
Whoa.
And
That's
this
amazing.
is one of my favorite ones. I mean, it's really hard to see here. I could email it to you if you want to take a look at it more, but
there's stars and something that looks like a bunch of glares for those of listening.
So
the spiraling fire.
So that is actually an exploded dead star. It's a supernova.
Wow.
It's I forget, don't quote me on this, but I want to say it's a couple 10,000 years old, and it's, I don't know, 17, I think, if I remember right, light years away. It's but all the blue in this is oxygen gas, and all the red is hydrogen gas. So you have filters on your scope that only let photons in that wavelength. So you can actually just take them in isolate. This was a full color image, but to put this in perspective, that giant telescope that you saw, it's very narrow. It doesn't do wide field. It only took, actually, when I took the on the camera you saw on that big one, it only took this picture.
Oh my goodness.
So
right.
cool.
So the thing that I just took here is this, and this is cropped in 5 times. So this actually, that little tiny scope takes a much wider field view. So when you're doing these sweeping panoramas, like Veil Nebula, which is really big, you got to have something that kind of widens it out. So what I went for was big originally, because that larger, aperture scope, like the bigger scope, lets in a lot more light, so you capture images quicker. And I knew that I would not have, just because I have so much going on in the world, I'm not going to have infinite amounts of time. So I wanted to let the most light in I could in the shortest amount of time, which got me the best images as fast as I could. I love that scope, but I realized very quickly I don't want to do that 15 times to mosaic together the Veil or any of the bigger ones. So I got a small, like the smaller guy, to do basically the same exact thing, but now I have a, 7 times the width of the field of view or something like that. So yeah, I didn't get into it slow and steady. I got into it like, held my nose and jumped right into the deep end of that pool. For sure.
How did you get started, and like as someone who does not know a lot of people in the telescope world, like
Yeah.
how did you like dive into that?
Kind of like I do everything. Like, so I started by saying, what is the cheapest telescope I can find? And, you find them on Amazon for like, $200, $150. And then what is the most expensive telescope I can find? And I found one for like 50 grand, 60 grand used. And I just went on a hunt to try to find out why one is 50 grand and one is $200. Like, and once you start identifying what causes price increases, then you can start deconstructing like which is going to be important to you. And I apply this theory to literally everything I've ever done in my entire life. Basically, it's like, all right, well, if I was a world-class archer, what would I be looking for in a bow and arrow, right? Like, and what makes it different than going to Dick's Sporting Good and grabbing like a little starter recurve bow? And, and then, you start finding out about, tension. I happen to have gone down this rabbit hole years ago as well, but like, with bows, it's all about like, pull, how many pounds of force it'll exert, how much the pull force is, how much the, shooting force is, and can it be adjustable to many spots, and dampening, and, all kinds of neat stuff. And then, how do you, minimize back and forth when you're letting go? There's all these little tools you could wrap around your wrist and click a button and it lets go of the string versus holding the string in your fingers. And, so you kind of just go on a little bit of a Google rabbit hole, I guess it is, and just sort of start finding out like what moves the needle in anything. And with telescopes, it's, in the context of this conversation, it seems like a lot in an infinite pool. But if we had like 2 hours, I could probably get you to like all 4 corners of that universe. And then it starts to repeat back on itself. Does that make sense? It's like, it's deep, but it's not that deep kind of thing. And I'm also a guy who believes in better living through science. So my rig is highly automated, and a lot of guys don't have that. Because they're not interested in it. And it's a fairly recent addition. Like Hugh, you were talking about that Raspberry Pi thing on that telescope. There's a little red box that's about the size of a credit card, but deeper. And it's a Raspberry Pi module that controls all of that stuff. So it plugs into your autofocuser, it plugs into your cameras, it plugs into your mount, and it controls all of that, and you can do these filter wheels where you could actually automatically change filters along, so it's pretty fun. And, it's not even that expensive, but, people have been doing it for 20 years, don't often even think about looking for new toys a lot of times. So I had the benefit of starting it during COVID. So all of these toys were at my disposal, and so I certainly wasn't going to make this job harder.
That's so cool. I feel like there are so many angles we can jump into.
Yeah, it's a fun hobby.
Yeah, we can keep talking about space and astronomy and stars and telescopes. We could also dive into the like you mentioned, the supplements and the I'm guessing there's like you're into like the nootropics and like
a
lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so this is my desk, right? Like here's bottle 1, here's bottle 2, here's bottle 3, there's tincture 4, 5, there's pill bottle 6. Like, yeah.
Wow, I'm very curious. So
yeah, what are you curious about? Let's talk.
Okay, so I've like looked into it in the past and basically went to a point where I said, okay, it's not worth it for me right now because the biggest gains in my view are just sleeping well, eating right, and exercising. And it's like if I'm not doing those 3 things, then there's no point in taking a whatever supplement. And it's like I don't I'll sleep well like maybe 6 days a week, but then maybe I should, instead of like looking into supplements, like try to get that seventh day of like better sleep. So I kind of stopped there. I guess one route I would potentially be interested in is kind of like what are the like what are the certain supplements that are like have the most benefit, but
Sure.
then with, like the least amount of consequences. And I'm sure it depends on the individual, but like how do you approach that?
Yeah, that's an easy one for me. I mean, I approached it similar to the telescope thing. I kind of looked at like the craziest supplement person on earth, like what are they doing? And obviously what you just said, the other side of the spectrum is eat right, sleep right, don't smoke cigarettes, and try to ease up on the booze, right? Like, I mean, at a certain point, good health is as much a function of common sense as it is about anything else, right? I mean, that is a fundamental truth. So between those two things, you've got a lot of stops on the train, right? And so I just kind of started years and years ago, like 10 years ago, maybe now, like 12, I don't know, a little over a decade ago, I lost a bunch of weight, right? I went from 212 pounds to 170 when I ran my first Ironman. And I felt great, but I felt like there was more I could do. And I started to kind of peel it back. And for me, it landed on, I am risk averse in a lot of, it sounds a little crazy for a guy who takes probably 15 supplements on a daily basis. But I am really risk averse. So I was not really into like the highly experimental, this could just as easily give you a third arm as it could, make you live to 200. Like so I wasn't really into being that guinea pig. But then you find out real quick that there are certain things, and I guess the standard disclaimer here is I'm not a doctor. We're not doctors. We should, I don't want people running out and, just kind of buying crazy stuff just because some doofus on the internet told them to do it. But vitamin D, real low risk reward threshold, right? Or high reward, low risk threshold. Vitamin D, and it's funny is during COVID, there's been a ton of research that comes out about the correlation between adequate, healthy, and excessive vitamin D levels and incidence of hospitalization and death by COVID, right? A lot of stuff out of Spain. You can Google vitamin D and COVID and come up with a lot of the research out there. I found that to be kind of neat because I had been taking heavy doses of vitamin D for a decade prior to that news prior to COVID becoming in fashion. So I did, that was kind of neat, but it's also not all that surprising, right? Vitamin D has got, I think something like 1,500 biological mechanisms attached to it. And it's the one thing that we are like, one of the many things we are chronically underachieving as a society, right? We spend a lot of time indoors, with all the fancy diets out there. People are like not eating dairy a lot, and no one's supplementing with this. So I got into a fight with my doctor. The turning point with this was I got into a fight with my doctor on a physical one day. He wouldn't give me a vitamin D test as a part of my physical. And it was really weird because I wanted one. He goes, you're a 35-year-old triathlete who exercises 6 days a week. I'm not giving you a vitamin D test. You don't need it. Well, I had been playing around with paleo at the time, and it was like December, January. So it's the middle of winter. And I was like, look, this isn't because I'm nuts. I mean, I'm a little crazy, but I'm not asking you for this because I'm crazy. I'm asking you because I have some lifestyle things that are going on right now that make me want to know if I am deficient or not. Blah, blah, blah. We've to the end of the story. He said, fine, I'll do it. He made me pay the $25 for the test. And it comes back, my vitamin D was 18 and rickets is 15. So, and reference level is like 40, so I was like way, way under where I needed to be. And the doctor was scratching his head. He goes, I thought you were just some lunatic coming in here yammering on about a WebMD article he read and whatnot. And I would never have guessed that. And then when he started asking me questions, I got kind of really pissed off and defensive. I said, listen, man, I'm not, go do your own research on the internet, brother. Like, you're a doctor. You should be like giving me this information, not the other way around. And it made me, that was the first time I really realized, I would say that was the start of my like N of one medical lifestyle, where I'm like, look, my doctor's not going to help me with this stuff. These guys don't know any more than me. And if I really want to take control of my health, that's the only path forward for me. So it was basically like, all right, clearly vitamin D is on the menu, because I've got now what I considered an acute vitamin D problem to solve. And he tried to throw me on medication. He's like, like, you have to go on the supplementation. I'm like, if it's all the same to you, we're just going to not talk anymore. I'm going to go to find another doctor. And I did that. And since then, that kind of has expanded. CoQ10 is another thing that I believe pretty strongly in. It's got a lot of, there's a ton of benefits on there. Again, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole in any one of these, but alpha lipoic acid and CoQ10 are two really have like generally regarded as safe, or GRAS designators on them. So again, pretty low threshold for risk and pretty high, probability of success. So I take those a lot. I take a whole food vitamin every day. So all of the vitamins inside of it are derived from whole foods and not synthetic versions. Not to say that that's necessarily bad, but citric acid versus ascorbic acid, different, things to get vitamin C. And I just was erring on the side of a more natural approach to it. And of late, I as I went down the rabbit hole more and more, you start getting into like the nootropic side, and that's less about, trying to live forever and more about, making your years here less degenerative in nature and more engaged. So I'm on a couple, mental nootropics, and I'm also on an NAD plus and ATP precursor daily. It's a 5 on 2 off thing. And again, that the genesis of that was really doing a deeper dive into how our cells progress through the course of life, and how cells will have an eventual senescence at some point, and your telomeres will shorten, and your cells kind of start to haywire over time, and so the more we can do to sort of retard that progression, I guess is the way of saying it, then the healthier years we hope to have. Now, obviously, none of this is, this is all kind of like on the fringe of science at this point, but the amount of consistent data that's coming out that sort of backs up a lot of this stuff is getting a little bit too hard to ignore, if that makes sense. It's now everywhere, right? And so my fascination with it just continues to grow every day. And as I read more and more, we are getting smarter, about this stuff, and the right path is different by your genome. I mean, I have a client who does nothing but genomic medications, right? Like the whole idea is to come up with medicines that are going to work because your genome says it's going to work, not because, it just is a broad scattershot approach, right? Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to go down a rabbit hole there.
What changes have you noticed since you've started on this journey? And obviously it's like, let's say you started training for triathlons as well, like alongside it. It's impossible to know exactly where that causation comes from, but like, have you noticed any differences with your health?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess you're totally right. I mean, a lot of times when they're like, oh, look, I took resveratrol and I lost 20 pounds. You're like, yeah, but you also started running 3 miles a day, and you stopped eating sugar, and you haven't had a Mountain Dew in 2 months. Like clearly, like, there's like a bunch of other stuff you did. So it's a little bit disingenuous to say like, oh, look, this resveratrol made me lose all this weight. But in my case, I have had a fairly consistent workout regime for a really long time. So when I do introduce a new thing, these days, it is pretty much the only thing that is different. And so it makes it a little easier for me to compare apples to apples. The NAD plus stuff, I would say, has a more sustained energy for longer periods of time. And I do feel like I mean, I'm 45. I feel like I'm in my 30s again. Like I have definitely felt better, you know. I'm cranking out pull-ups easier than I used to. Like I still get a decent night's sleep. I'm usually asleep by 11:30ish every night, and I'm up in the morning around 6:30. But like I never used to get up early, for example. And now at 6:30, I'm up. I do 25 minutes of Qigong, 20 minutes of meditation, and 20 minutes of writing every morning. And I never, 10 years ago when I was getting rolling on this, I was drinking a bottle of wine a night with maybe a gin after that. And, I used to smoke cigarettes and like I was a totally different person. And like it'd be laughable to think I'd end up in this position. Right. And now it's just fine tuning, right? Like it's just keeping going. I've got, we're starting to do experimentation with metformin and a couple other, sort of taking it to the next level. And, who knows where it goes, but, these little panels back here, you see these suckers? Those are red light panels that I do red light therapy a couple times a week. I've got an infrared sauna. I do infrared sauna a couple times a week. One of the things we just covered on my podcast actually is this fun little toy called a Vielight. This is kind of fun. So hold on.
What is that? It's like on like a finger?
Yeah. So check this out. You do this.
Whoa, it's up his nose right now.
Yeah. So it's red light that you put in your nose, and you've got 5 arteries that traverse your nasal cavity. So you can irradiate your blood with near infrared. And this one has 633 nanometer spectrum red light. What? And it's all timed out, and you just keep it in there for 20 minutes. It shuts off when you're done. And that's it. That's all she wrote. So if you don't have giant red light panels to talk about, and like, this is what I take when I travel. And I'll just take it with me when I travel to kind of get that red light therapy without having my giant panels. So
those of you listening, Matt just plugged what looked like a USB cable into his nose.
Yeah.
just for some context, and then there's a red light on it.
Yeah. And then like light therapy is an interesting thing. This one goes in your ear. Let's see if I don't think it's charged actually at the moment.
While you're figuring that, I just want to say this is one of the best combos I've ever had in my life. This is so fun.
Yeah. So
Matt's just pulling out toys.
Yeah. So here you got this next thing. And so this is actually headphones that go in your ear, just like regular like AirPods would, and they shine a white light spectrum onto your brain. And basically it recharges you. It's called the Human Charger actually, and it's really like absolutely breathtakingly effective at jet lag. So when I go from East Coast to West Coast, about 4 or 5 o'clock at night, I'll put those in. It's an 11-minute therapy window, and you throw it in there, and it's timed out, and it's Bluetooth, so you can keep talking or listening to music, or I've gone on runs with it and stuff. I was just in Las Vegas a couple months ago for a trade show, and I went on a run at night with the Human Charger and did 2 sessions in a row. And then I was ready for dinner and ready to go. And it completely changes your jet lag, like 100%. And when I come back to the East Coast, you do it the other way around. You do it in the morning. So you kind of, you swip swap depending on the therapy windows, depending on when you're trying to pep up.
Oh, you do it like 16 hours before you might go to sleep, like something like that.
It's more like to get yourself back onto that wavelength. So when you go east or when you go west from the east, you need to stay up later than you're used to. So you hypercharge your brain with this light that kind of pulls you into that time zone in a gentle, non-chemical way. And basically, I've shortcutted time zone acclimation by days, like you can get really onto it. And it's a non-chemical way of doing that. It's believe it or not, it's pretty low tech. Your ear canal to your brain, shine white light on there, kind of the end of the story. There's not a whole lot more to talk about with that, but it's a great little toy to have around in your arsenal, so
what has been and if it's this toy, then I want to know as well, but what has been the single thing that you travel with that has been surprisingly beneficial for your health?
My travel stack, that is a hard question to answer, actually, because my travel stack is the Violite, the human charger, vitamin D, a B complex, the ATP precursor, NAD precursor, a nootropic, ashwagandha, and this stuff called, I don't know how to pronounce it, actually. It's XCLAR, Xlear. I don't know if they have some pronunciation for it, but it's a grapefruit seed, saline, xylitol nose spray that actually they just came out with, again, one of those coincidences. I used to use it for just like moisturizing and keeping your nasal passages clean on a plane, but it actually they had some studies that says it prevents the SARS virus from actually adhering to your nasal cavity. So it was there's studies ongoing on it, but they're showing promise towards thwarting the uptake through your nose anyway. And if you go down that same rabbit hole, Scope and Listerine, they've got similar studies for I forget the acronym for the compound, but they're studying how that prevents adhesion in your mouth as well. So it's just funny, like all these things that are going on that you just didn't even know that they had other applications, if you will. So, but I take all of that with me, and I also take liquid THC drops with me as well. So that's kind of to round things out. So my travel kit is pretty full. So yeah, but you know what? I don't get sick before, during, or after travel very often, if ever. So, I mean, do I just have a crazy robust immune system, or is it all this crazy shit I bring with me? I don't know. I don't know, but it makes me feel better traveling. So I'm gonna stick with that. So I know people that are worse, actually. I got friends that take a lot more stuff with them, but that human charger thing is like, I think it's like under $100. I mean, like some of these toys are stupid expensive. Other ones are just like, yeah, even if it didn't work, it's a great set of noise canceling headphones. And if it does help you treat jet lag faster, then what the hell, So
yeah, if there's like a 50% chance that it works,
yeah, right
half of the time, it's
yeah,
like still probably worth, and it's so small to carry around, and if it's less than $100, like it's worth giving it a shot.
Now I will say the one thing, and I don't have it with me. Oh, I do have it with me, actually. The one thing that is not $100, I think it's like $250. So it's a little bit more expensive, is the Muse headband.
Oh, I've used that. I have I've tested it out before.
Speaking of travel, I just got back from a trip and I had it in my bag. But yeah, you kind of put this thing around your head, and the app tracks brainwaves while you're meditating. And for me, this thing has probably been the most used toy that I have. I use it every day. And
oh, really?
And I use it every day. And I got to say, it's like training a muscle. As soon as you know how to like hit a tennis ball with the overhand that you like, you do that 10,000 times, you just know how to hit that ball, right? Like, and more importantly, if you hit it wrong, you're like, oh shit, I messed that one up. Like, right away, like you don't need to see where the ball goes to know that you messed up the shot, right? Like you feel it because you've done it so many times. This has actually gotten me to that spot with a truly meditative state. Like I know when I'm off, right? And I know I don't even actually have the volume up anymore, because this has birds that chirp when you hit that like sweet spot.
Yeah.
I've got the birds turned off. Like I don't even need the app anymore. the app tracks the consistency. So I use the app basically as like a neurotic reminder that I have or have not, meditated. So, but
I've used it before as well.
yeah. How did you like it?
Oh, it was cool. I was at a conference and it was like one of the prizes, and they're like, here, you can try it.
Oh,
And
it's great. Were you able to get a bunch of birds chirping?
yeah, I had been meditating more at the time.
Okay, great.
But I don't know if I would be able to do that anymore.
So here's a question for you. I mean, if you could remember, I'd be curious. Did you, if you were meditating before that, did you kind of see a corollary between like birds chirping and like what you felt was like a meditative state?
Oh, interesting question.
Because I didn't have that. I was not meditating a lot before it. I mean, I had done meditation, but it was like spotty. So I didn't have that experience.
For those of you listening, the context is that the Muse headband is it's a meditative like tracks your brain waves, and then it'll like play like a bird's chirping noise when you like hit that sweet spot. So it's not really a fair comparison, because during meditation I do have that feeling of like, oh, this is really nice, like I don't need anything, I'm just here. But at least from the books that I've read, you're not supposed to chase that feeling. Like you're
I
just
say,
supposed to,
yeah,
like,
right.
you're just supposed to like be very mindful. So
Right.
I think it it makes it so that it's more gamified, and that there's more of like a something to aim for.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, that's a fair assessment for sure.
yeah. But I think if anyone's curious about it, if it makes you more likely to meditate regularly, I think it's totally worth it.
And that's actually kind of what I use it for more than anything. It's like, okay, breaking that streak. Like I just broke the streak the other day. Like I had, I think 50 something days, and then I just missed one day. And it was because I had something going on with my kids, and I quite frankly just forgot to do it. And at like 11:59, like before we went over to midnight, I was like, oh fuck. And I was like, and it was too late. I wasn't going to get a session in it. And like, it was gut wrenching, like doing because I did actually meditate that day, but it was like at 12, like 10. And so I was already past it. And I was like, oh, that sucks. Like it just, and then you start over at 1, and you're like, oh, damn it. I got to start over. But so I use it more as an accountability partner than anything. And I will tell you, I mean, I feel infinitely better meditating for 50 days in a row than skipping days, right? Like I definitely lose that rhythm. I don't know if you had that same experience, but
Yeah. I think my senior year of college, I was pretty consistent with it, and like sort of like for a number of years. Yeah, basically I would like wake up, do my thing, and then meditate for 20 minutes, and that was like part of the routine. I had a little cushion, and it it was a really great space. How do I describe it? It was like a really great space to just like give time for me.
yeah, for sure. No, it's great. And I think to your point, I'm a, I do a lot of photography as we talked about earlier. And people, one of the first questions everybody asks who's thinking about getting into is what's a better camera, Canon or Nikon? And I'm like, well, what camera do you have that's going to make you take more pictures? And that's the right answer to the question, right? Like it doesn't have to necessarily always be about comparing all the different ways you can do something. It's just, which one are you going to use? Like, is it, and for me, that's definitely it. I mean, one of my podcast partner actually has been like a Museaholic, and he has like every version of it he's had, but like, again, that keeps him engaged. Right. So I'm like, I bought this one, and if it ever goes, I don't even need the headband anymore. Really. I just use it more as an accountability tool. So there's a version in Muse where you don't even need the headband. You can just do a timed meditation. So I'm like, there's been days where I just forgot it, or it's upstairs and I'm too lazy to go get it. And I'm just like, I'm just going to meditate here and I don't need to put the headband on. I'm just going to. So when this thing does die for whatever reason, I'm likely not going to replace it. I'm going to just kind of take my lessons learned and keep rocking out, just meditating.
I'm thinking about getting one because I'm wondering if it'll make me more consistent.
There's a lot of nerdiness in this thing. I'm telling you, it's a lot of fun if you're into that nerd trip. It's you can get raw data. There's another app that lets you actually look at the brain waves that's coming out of it, and it's really kind of super nerdy. It's a paid thing, and I didn't do the paid thing, but I did do the like free trial, and you could kind of look at the brain waves, and it's fascinating. You just to kind of, I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist. I don't have tools that measure theta waves in my brain, like I don't. So having this is like kind of a neat trick, right? Same thing with this, like this Aura ring, like I've had this on for years too. And like this thing is a lot of fun. I don't know how clinically accurate it is, but I use it in comparison to itself. So, what it measured yesterday and how it measured it, it's going to do the same thing today. And so whether it technically means I'm in a rested state or my parasympathetic nervous system is under duress, like, I don't know. And I think we can have all kinds of conversations around, how accurate the predictions are or what the prognosis is of these things are. But, if you're looking to say, hey, look, my body temperature is elevated from yesterday, and oh, look, my body temperature has been elevated for 5 days. Well, maybe, I have a cold, or maybe I have COVID, or maybe I have some, so, it's not necessarily, I don't necessarily read all this means this means that, but I do kind of look for the trends, right? Like the trend is I got 100 birds during this meditation session, and then tomorrow I have 10. Okay, well, I was clearly not present for that session, like at least compared to the one before it, right? And so like that's what a lot of these tools, like the measurement, the self-quantification side of the wearables, like I think that's where the biggest value comes, just tracking you, right? I don't care about I'll talk to you about your Aura ring or your Muse, but quite frankly, I don't give a shit if you have birds or not. Like that, I'm comparing this for me, right? Like this is my thing. And aside from having a nerd conversation about it, like that's the value I extract right from it. So that being said, I do like the Aura ring quite a bit, and I did lie. This is the one I definitely use a lot because it never comes off my finger.
Yeah, actually, Dr. Mike, who we've had on the podcast 3 times, swears by.
Oh, really?
As well, yeah.
Why do they swear by it? Like, what was their sort of?
So for him, because he can track how well he's sleeping.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's I think what a lot of people really like lean on.
Yeah, he can like see how he's feeling and then be like, oh, I didn't sleep well, and it's probably not 100% accurate, but even if it's like 80% accurate, then you can kind of be like, oh, I'm only getting like 50. Like, what do I need to change?
Yeah, what do I need to do? Yeah, I think a lot of people who like ride against these trends, right? Like who are like, oh, I know a sleep scientist who like absolutely hates the idea of the Aura, right? And I said, well, what do you hate about it? He's like, in a lab, you have to, this machine costs $100,000 and you have to hook it up all night. And it's like, and he goes through all these things that are all right. He's been doing it for 20 years. Like he knows what he's doing. But I said, yeah, but look, man, I to your point, let's just say it's right 80% of the time or 60% of the time. It's really not about being right or wrong. It's more about just telling you what the hell is up, right? Like, I mean, I'm like, hey, you slept bad for like 4 nights in a row. You might want to actually pay attention to why that's happening, right? Like, who cares what it means? Well, it means I didn't go to bed till late. That's what that means. I don't need a ring to tell me that. But, when you get into like heart rate variability, which this measures as well, I know that my HRV wants to be in the 30s, high 30s, low 40s on Aura. And I know, Sweet Beat was an app I used to use that measures it differently. Your Apple Watch measures it differently. So HRV could be measured in a lot of different ways. But for me on the Aura, I know that if I have an HRV in the teens, like I'm stressed out, that generally correlates to me being stressed out. And what does that mean? Well, I don't care what Aura says. I know that that means I need to either, dial back at work. I need to dial up the meditation. I got to go on longer runs. Like I got to do something because I'm doing something else wrong. And sometimes it's, you're the worst observer of your own habits. And so sometimes just having somebody tell you that you're just not doing it right is what you need to kind of course correct. Right. So, but it's fun that another guy that, likes it. I know a lot of people that, that do like it. I do know a couple people that do not. So,
we take a slight detour. I'm curious.
Yeah.
Because Hugh mentioned that you had bought a domain name, and like, just curious about the story.
That was headshop.com actually. Yeah. That was, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We, and that is what, that's where all this stuff is going for me. Right. Like, we're talking about health and cannabis, and, cannabis accessories are almost tertiary to the conversation at this point, although that's where Headshop started. But, now it's about, we've talked to tons of people that are treating severe anxiety, depression, PTSD with things like psychedelics and cannabis and stuff. And it's basically like, these are real human stories, not just some shit you read on the internet. And, when I can see that in real life and then couple it with the shit you read on the internet, and you say, hey, look, there's all these other people all over the world that are doing the same thing. I think for people who are paying attention, that's interesting information, especially when you look at all the deleterious side effects that a lot of the antipsychotics have, or the, I was on Adderall for literally like 30 days and I was like, oh, nope, hard pass. Like it was, recreationally, it was a lot of fun for the first couple of days, but I was like, I'm not supposed to be taking this for recreation. So like the fact that I'm likening this experience to recreation means that it's not right for me, right? Like this isn't, and so, Headshop has been a great platform to have a reason to explore these things in greater detail to a different end, right? Yeah. Turns it from hobby to like profession, right? And so
you have the e-commerce store, and you also have the web design. Is it like an agency or?
Yeah. So Envoy Design is our agency, and we sort of are a full scale development shop from strategy through, ongoing maintenance, and we build mobile apps, websites, software, stuff like that. If it ends up on a laptop, your phone or a tablet, we make it. So it's a pretty broad description, but that's kind of the 50,000 foot view of that. If it's tech based, we build it or have built it or want to build it. So
cool. Which side of the business is more interesting and like rewarding to you, or maybe both? Like,
oh yeah, it's like asking which kid you like better, like it's a little hard, right? Because they're both literally my children, so that's a hard answer. They both have different personalities. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. The Envoy side is interesting because it lets me play with interesting technologies, right? We're working on some quantum encryption products right now that is software and hardware based. And, the client for that is a really interesting project that I literally I didn't even know that this concoction of technologies could ever exist. So, having him sort of give us the recipe and then we get to sort of create the cake has been an interesting journey. And that is one of 1,000 different stories like this. We worked, years ago, we worked on MasterCard as an app, and like, that was the global app, right? Everybody on the planet who wanted to find out where you could use MasterCard was using that app. And, that's kind of a story that you just don't get to be a part of very often, right? And, we've been very fortunate. We work with ad agencies a lot of the time. And so we're very fortunate to have worked on much bigger projects than I could have ever gotten on my own. But then that leads to big direct clients that you get because you worked on all the other stuff. So like, you're kind of like, well, I only we used to say like, oh, we only got that project because of this agency. But now I'm like, well, no, we're getting those projects now because of us, not because somebody else is giving it to us. Now we're just, we have the experience and the seasoning to be able to step into that narrative and be productive. Right. And so that's been good. I think, I'm in a place in my career where I'm just very grateful to be where I'm at, and very grateful that even though a lot of the stories that I have didn't end the way I wanted them to end, it was a journey that led me right here to this conversation. And I don't know that I would change any of that. Right. And so, and Headshop, allows me to focus less on how to build the website that is Headshop, and not care as much about merchant process, like, the nuts and bolts of running an e-commerce store, and then worry about the user experience and, caring for our customers. And like, why does this customer want to buy this thing? How do we make them more educated, respect this more, be kind? We try to work with companies and more that have responsible packaging policies. And, we don't sell throwaway batteries on the site. Like, we're trying to sort of shift the narrative in what, like, you can go to any dispensary here in Maryland and half the store is disposable batteries. And I'm friends with one of the owners here. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Get this shit off your shelves, man. Like, this is what, they're $20 battery. You're making like what, $8, whatever on this thing. Is it really worth poisoning the landfill with a battery that's going to sit there for the next 20,000 years, just so you can make $8? Or could you just sell a rechargeable one that is going to have a much longer lifespan if you're going to sell battery products? So hopefully we can play a larger role in that story at some point, but we're a small fish still. So, we're not quite as big as these big guys, but.
Cool. We'll put links to Matt's design agency and e-commerce store down below. And yeah, one thing we ask all of our guests is,
sure,
if you had any words of wisdom, generic words of wisdom, what do you have?
I once was told to ask 7 questions if you really want to know the answer, right? And you can always, it's always a fascinating exercise, right? So if I asked you, like, what's your favorite food? First question, right? What's your favorite food? Well, let's just do it real quick. Pizza. Okay. Well, what do you like about pizza?
Hugh, what do you like about pizza?
It's not my favorite food. Sorry, bro.
Yeah.
No, let's change to Hugh's answer.
Okay. All right. Back it up. Hugh, what's your favorite food?
All right. Right now, currently, mapo tofu.
Okay. Why do you like that?
Sichuan peppers and family cooking. Reminds me of mom.
Reminds you of mom. Well, what is it that reminds you about mom?
Mom makes the best mapo tofu.
Oh, right. How many people do you know that also make this? And is it any different than your mom's?
In Arizona, 0.
Yeah. Is that like is that a cultural, like, where does it come from? I've never heard
It's
of
from the southwestern province of China called Sichuan province, and there's a Sichuan pepper called Sichuan pepper, and it's a mouth-numbing pepper that's really amazing, and a different sense of, not capsaicin, but it has this different type of like dragon breath feel to me.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. So like when you eat it, does it like bring you to like a cultural, spiritual, or like mental place of like remembering childhood or something? Or like what's this? And like, you obviously have to like that for a reason. Like what?
It's actually really interesting. Like, I mean, not very interesting, as in a simple way, it's one of the first types of food that kind of blew my mind about what food could be. And I've only ever found here and there at some like a speakeasy cocktail bar, on their secret menu, they had a cocktail that I found out had a Sichuan pepper, one single one on top, and I ordered it, and it gave me that same feel. So mapo tofu, especially in America, is way more muted and doesn't actually use Sichuan peppers. So a lot of that one is actually a memory experience of feel.
That's crazy. And so like you'd say like it brought you to like a better place mentally. Like you have like these happy feelings when you eat it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not like capsaicin, which does release dopamine and such. This one's more of a it's just a totally different sensation. Like it's just different.
So here's the thing. That was the 7th question. Look at the difference in your answer, in your tone, in your body language, in our interaction between each other that we got to from question 1, which was what was your favorite food, to question 7, where you're like literally telling me about dopamine release and all these crazy things. Like that's a really different journey, right?
Definitely.
So generic thing, ask 7 questions. It will change your life. Like literally.
and so there's another thing that we always say, and you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Like,
And
there's so many things today, Mr.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately not the first person to ever say that, but it's the one thing that like I'm like, you know what, that this is the very succinct answer. That's not a succinct answer, and it has life-changing power. Like it's
I love how you said that. Like in design, as from a design thinking perspective, we say the 5 whys, but I actually kind of like yours more because it actually is more nuanced, where you don't just keep saying why. It becomes repetitive, and the people just kind of like, oh, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
You're like, dude, stop asking me why.
Yeah, like come on, let's not be generic here, right? Let's care.
Right. Yeah, and you know, I picked an intentionally innocuous, you know, thing like what's your favorite food, but like if you start out with a really hard question like why are you sad today, like you ask 7 questions based on that guy, it's like wow, like you get down the rabbit hole deep, like and you know that can be really painful, and it could be really cathartic, it could be really freeing. I mean there's a lot of things that could come out of that, but you'd be really surprised if you make a habit of this. And I do this a lot. Ask 7 questions. So.
Wow. Amazing. Really. You're absolutely incredible. And just thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys. This was a lot of fun, man. I really had a good time. Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity.
What's the podcast that you're creating called, by the way?
Oh, Irreverent Health. So we actually have the site coming out when we hit our 20th episode. So I can. So
all right,
we'll be a couple weeks away from it, but it's on the radar.
Perfect. Shoot me a line then. And then the other one is, do you have a photographic portfolio or something where people could reference your works?
No, we actually intentionally keep our portfolio off of the internet because we don't want people to just say, build me that. We want people to
no. I mean, your astronomy.
Oh, no. I don't do
what?
that.
They're so good.
This is my personal obsession. Yeah. Maybe someday, but right now they're mine. Only mine. Yeah.
One day. All right.
Yeah. One day. I'll work on it. Maybe I'll think about that. Yeah.
But yeah, you know, of course, watermark it and such.
Yeah, right.
That would be yes.
No, if I ever do it, it won't be watermarked. It's just take it, use it, whatever you want. I'm a giver kind of guy in this guy.
Just make it an NFT and then just get a few things token on it.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, with that, Matt, hopefully one day we have you on the podcast again if you're open to it.
Yeah,
and for tonight and this evening, that is the conclusion of another episode of the MoonTeaPodcast, where we talk about craft, community, and building meaningful careers. Tune in next time. See ya. Bye.
Bye.